And thank you, Minister, for coming to the House to present the Finance Bill. And as reluctant as I am to disturb the Mills and Boone novel and the love-in that's been going on here since this session started, I think there's a few things that we need to be mindful of. And the first one is that we have 10,000 people who are homeless, and we have 1 million people who are on the waiting list. And we need to examine exactly what this budget is delivering, a few euro in people's pockets. And even that hasn't been done fairly. The government's own figures published on Budget Day recognise this fact. Now, Fianna Fáil here on my left, you constantly hear this pleading, we have taken the more difficult path. The difficult path is the one that the mothers and the children and the families have to take to the Capuchin centres and to the Vincent de Paul and those charities to fulfil their very basic needs. That is the difficult path. They say they're economically responsible. Well, you can't economically responsible and Fianna Fáil to be used in the same sentence. Well, I'll leave that to people's imagination. We see even last night in terms of what Fianna Fáil did in Mayo County Council. They voted for a 2% increase in the commercial rates for businesses. So you have businesses, small Indigenous businesses that we talk about, again paying the price. And when we look at this budget, we see a single worker on 20,000 a year will receive €14 over a whole year as a result of the tax changes. That's very far from a £5 a week. At 30,000, the same person will get €39 a year. A self-employed married person on 70,000 gains €15 a week. Some gain in 1 week more than others gain in a whole year. Now, I'm not going to exaggerate the tax cuts. They were modest overall, but the pattern is very clear. The Minister is set on chipping away at the tax base and repeating the mistakes of the past. Now, I wonder if the Minister will let us know how many more tax policies Fine Gael will have. In a very short space of time, we've had abolished the USC, merged the USC and the PRSI, and now we're promised an increase in tax bans. This is completely inconsistent and a wing and a prayer policy making, and it's very dangerous. I wish to focus on some areas of concern within the bill. The betting tax approach is the wrong approach. Sinn Féin has consistently called for a greater level of tax from the betting sector, something other parties have run scared of for a long time. I know when I worked in the betting industry in Britain, the actual tax was 10%. It was 10% in every bet that was placed. But it must be done correctly and fairly. We are all aware that the betting groups have put forward a unified position on this, calling for a gross profit tax to be applied. And I think, Minister, we need to have another look at that with some fresh eyes. The acceleration of the landlord's tax break is indefensible at this time when rents are increasing so much. Sinn Féin has outlined what is needed: a freeze on rents, a tax relief equivalent to 1 month, and much more supply. That is the type of message a budget should deliver, a message that shows what is going on in the real world and where the real need is. Instead, again, what we've got is vested interests being looked after. The complete lack of willingness from government to correct its mistake and tax intangible assets onshored between 2015 and 2017 is really arrogant. You've closed the door, but you won't clean up the mess. And I welcome the fact that you've closed the door. But 750 million extra we could be talking about for housing and for health if you only stood up to the multinationals for once and did the right thing. Likewise, you've brought in an exit tax, which again is welcome and is required under the agreements we've signed up to. But you have set it at 12.5%. Instead of 33%, the normal capital gains tax rate. This is most definitely capital gains tax because it's taxing a definite tax that has been profits that have been made. Therefore, there's no reason that it should be set at 12.5%. One tax company requested it, so again we're delivering it. Who can afford to pay more than the banks, Minister? It's really pathetic that you won't tax them. We could have got 175 million again to be spent on health and housing through that action. But Fine Gael actually changed the law so that these banks won't have to pay for up to 20 years. Why? Because there's an ongoing bailout of the Irish banks on the backs of Irish people. Government policy has been the banks first and the banks last. All their policy decisions in banking have been about protecting the banks above the public. They're fattening up the banks for the sale by letting them gorge on the workers. Great competition is required, but so too is the reform, Minister. This must include mortgage interest rates caps, taxing the bank's profits and a ban on sales to vulture funds of family homes. I wish to welcome the extension of Section 481. This is a key and central component of the film industry. There is no doubt about it that the benefits of this tax relief that is recognised by the vast majority of the industry. It should remain in the future as part of our tax policy in this state. Having said that, there are concerns over the labour standards and avoidance in the industry, and I think they must be looked at. I wish to signal too that I have concern about the deletion of Section 494AG in the Principal Act through Section 55 of this Act. Here some tax advisers are of the view that this deletion is unwise. I will hash it out, Minister, at committee stage. The finance bill implements a bad budget. It also missed huge opportunities to create a fairer Ireland. It doesn't deal with the major issues like property tax reform or carbon tax plans. Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil can't run away from their own tax. It's a logic of a tax based on the value forever. And therefore, Minister, we will be opposing this bill.